Tomorrow marks the second anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The attack provoked, of course, global outrage, and since 2022, thousands of civilians have been killed.
From the start, one British woman has provided care and support to the most vulnerable. Good Morning Britain has followed Wanda Warrington, an NHS midwife from Bury, who has dedicated herself to the refugees in Ukraine, earning the gratitude of those not only serving the war, but from those women whose babies have been born into it. She's so far made 17 trips into Ukraine, distributing much-needed aid and maternity equipment, providing vital checkups for pregnant mothers and evacuating sick children and injured soldiers.
All this with the love and unwavering support of her husband, children and grandchildren in a country where tensions show, sadly, no signs of easing. Well, in a moment, we're going to be joined by veteran journalist and broadcaster John Sweeney about the prospects for the war and any hope for its ending. But let's talk first to Wanda. She's joining us now from Ukraine's capital in Kyiv. Wonderful to see you there this morning. Sad the need for you to be doing the work you do is still there. And when you hear in your introduction there, not only the work you're doing for those who are surviving and living through the war, but the idea that during this time, new little souls have been born into war. How does it feel to be back there?
Good morning. Being back in Ukraine, sometimes for me, it just feels like I'm coming home. I've been coming for so many times now that I've built up so many networks. But more importantly, for me, it's about the women, the children and the babies that we come to help and support. And that being a midwife is what it's about for me. And in terms of what's happening here and with the stresses of the war, we're seeing an increase in premature births and women that are struggling to produce enough breast milk because of the stress, delivering babies while there's missiles flying, and they're birthing in rooms with sandbags. To the sound of that, the stress is just phenomenal.
I can only imagine, Wanda, what it's like to have to go through. It's the eve of the second anniversary of this awful war that we were all told, this special military operation, as it was dubbed by the Russians, we were all told was going to be very quick. It clearly hasn't been quick. How have things changed since your first trip, 17 trips ago, to where you find yourself today, just in terms of facilities and the hope and the optimism of the Ukrainian people?
So the situation when we first came, thought that it would be resolved fairly quickly, but 2 years in, and with it still ongoing, what we've seen is that the resilience, which is remarkable, of the Ukrainian people towards what's been happening here in Ukraine, and also the strength for them to carry on. And when we first came and we were helping and supporting and bringing aid, we continually evolved to meet the needs of what is needed here. But the Ukrainian people themselves have organised themselves really well, and with the support from us as international volunteers, we can really help them to create better futures for what we call the little Ukrainians. But of course it's difficult. We thought it would all be over with now, and it isn't. And the devastation that you see, even now when I come, it still overwhelms me to see that people are living in this situation. And even here in Kyiv yesterday, when we were walking through, to see the sandbags just being put up against windows and what have you, because we're coming up to the second year anniversary, so it looks like they're preparing for further attacks.
Well, we'll talk to John Sweeney about that in just a moment, because I'm sure he can give us an insight in what perhaps could be expected. You are a mum, you're a wife, you're a grandmother as well, and every time you go back, you are going back to a war zone. Your family have given you your blessing, but you are taking a huge risk. How do you balance up that risk, Wanda, with your family back here in the UK and your family there that you have now found in Ukraine, and how do you deal with it?
So when I'm at home, I am a hands-on grandma, very close to my family and my grandchildren in particular, and that's really what spurs me on. I hope that my family are proud of me, but also that it's something that my grandchildren will take forward as they grow, to see what the grandma did. And when I see the children and the babies that we're supporting here, when I look at them or when I hold them, all I see is the faces of my own grandchildren, and that's what I've said from the word go, is that if anything like this ever happened closer to home, I would hope that somebody like myself and my other volunteers would come forward and support. And it's lovely for me to see women that I've cared for antenatally, and now, like nearly 2 years on, seeing how their children are thriving. In fact, after this interview today, I'm going to see one of the women that I cared for antenatally and see the baby. She's 20 months now. And also the work that we do to help people who need vital operations. There's a young girl, Anastasia. She's 8 years old and she has a cleft palate, and that is stopping her from eating properly, and that in terms of her development and speech. And with our contacts with the Lviv Children's Hospital, we've arranged for her to have her operation, and there's a team of US surgeons flying in to undertake that operation on the 25th of February. So I know of her, we've supported, but today I finally get to meet her, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Goodness me, Wanda, your family will undoubtedly be extraordinarily proud of what you are doing, as are we here as well, representing us as somebody who is British and has Polish heritage as well, I know, and now you've got this family in Ukraine. That is extraordinary what you're doing, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Wanda. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Veteran journalist and broadcaster John Sweeney here, and we know you've been reporting for us and many others on this throughout the war. When Wanda's talking there, not just about the horrors, the medical horrors of injuries from war and loss of life, but the ordinary things like a little soul born with a cleft palate, the challenges that would be the biggest drama in any parent's life in the UK, wouldn't it? And they're dealing with it on top of everything else. Is there any hope, in your view, for an end to this?
The problem is that is down to Vladimir Putin, and he's not our friend. I mean, I was incredibly moved listening to Wanda's stories, and fair play to her and to all the British people who have done their bit in terms of looking after our Ukrainian friends. But the reality is we haven't done enough, and we have overpromised and we have underdelivered, and I feel we are in danger of betraying Ukraine because we're not giving them enough materiel, enough guns, enough ammo, enough artillery to stop the Russian killing machine. And they're on the move. They recently took this town in the east called Avdiivka. There's a kind of sense that Putin is on the front foot, and it's down to him. And our problem is, look, listen, we may not be interested in fighting Vladimir Putin, but boy, is he interested in fighting Ukraine than us. And we're not doing enough.
I mean, it feels as... Do you think there's any element that other conflicts that are also as shocking, that have taken our attention, have moved the West's focus of it? Because it's certainly not changed the focus and the reality for those in Ukraine.
Well, yes, exactly. That's bang on the money, Kate. So, October the 7th, the Hamas massacre in Israel, that's Vladimir Putin's birthday. By the way, Anna Politkovskaya, who was a great critic, was killed in 2006 on October the 7th, Putin's birthday. Boy, does he like a birthday treat. The problem is that the war carries on, and...
You suggesting you think he's behind stirring it up?
I think, well, it happened on his birthday,
right,
and it has really, really helped Russia's war against Ukraine because the West focus shifted immediately to the Middle East. And there is some evidence, certainly, so, for example, Hamas has been to Moscow, all of that. But at the same time, far more people have died in Ukraine. And this is a war in Europe, and we're not doing enough. So, for example, we've given 14 main battle tanks to Ukrainians. Ukrainians have knocked out 2,000 Russian tanks, and the Russians have got 8,000 left. I mean, our aid is kind of pathetically small, and that has a consequence because the Russians are now moving forward, and you can feel the smirk on Vladimir Putin's face is getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
So our aid, as you say, is pathetically small. His smirk's getting bigger, and we've just seen the death of Alexei Navalny, the one person who was really outspoken and stood up against him over there. What has that done for his position in Russia?
Well, there's an election. Right, it's a coronation, it's not an election. But what it said, the murder of Navalny, and he was murdered, and the proof of this is the Russians won't give the body of the son to the grieving mother. The consequence is this: you mess with me, you mess with Putin, you may die. Look what happens to Navalny. Navalny was rude about me, Navalny was critical, he's dead. So it's not an election, it's everybody must vote for Vladimir, or if you don't, you may die.
So how do we, or how do the Ukrainians chart a way to find a solution to this, to get their country back, to get peace?
Well, a lot of this happens, it's down to us in the West, in particular the MAGA idiots in the United States who are mucking around.
So the Trump supporters?
Yeah, the Trump supporters, who are effectively the Putin supporters. They need to wake up. But also we need to wake up too, as well. So the factory that made the Challenger 2 tanks is now a housing estate. And, I mean, we have a problem in that our defence has been neglected. And listen, I want to spend much more money on schools and health, and just like everybody else. But we can't ignore the monster in the Kremlin, and we've got to do more to help our Ukrainian friends, and also to send a message to Putin. You know, don't try World War III, son, because we're well prepared. And at the moment, we look weak and he looks strong.
We saw Wanda at the end there talking about the fact she's in Kyiv, wandering around and seeing people putting sandbags up next to windows.
Back up again.
The second anniversary, clearly there are concerns in Kyiv that this might lead to Putin launching more attacks on the capital. What is your understanding of that?
I banged my knee again, and so I can't. I was supposed to be there, and I'm really upset. But it's scary, and my friends, all of my Ukrainian friends, are worried. They're worried about the lack of materiel. They're worried about Trump. They're worried about Putin assassinating Navalny, and there's a sense of, I mean, the tremendous optimism 2 years ago when I was there. It was, you know, the Russian army was 12 miles away. It was scary. I've done a film of my video diaries, which I'm going to stick up on Twitter, and you can feel the fear in my face. Sorry, you can see
it. Feel it. Yeah.
It's so early in the morning.
It is.
No wonder you're running away. But also it was wonderful to be alive at that moment, because the Ukrainians were standing up to the Russian bully, and they really were, and it was amazing, and it was funny, and it was great. But now it feels like we've all got bored. Can we move on to the next item, please? And no, Putin's still there.
And they need our support, don't they? John, hopefully your knee heals soon and you can get back out there. And Wanda, wow, what an extraordinary woman she is as well.
Extraordinary, yeah. Always a pleasure to hear your take on it, John, as well. Thank you very much indeed.